adding the other participants, and then she's going to get us to stream live on YouTube. We're having an issue with the microphone hearing her. So if you need anything said, I'll relay it to her. She can hear you all, but she just can't speak and have it heard.
And Nicole is still on the attendee list.
Right.
Yeah.
And Patty's trying to get in too.
Oh, right.
I sent her the link before.
She was on before. I just have to see if she needs to be brought back over.
She was in the chat a minute ago saying she thinks she's on, but she's not a panelist, but I don't see her at all. And Nicole said she was trying to get in.
Judy, did
Nancy?
you get an email? Did you get an email today with the link in it?
Today, a reminder.
Yeah,
The meeting starts in an hour.
yeah, and it
Yeah,
has
yeah.
a link in it.
Yeah.
I went into the original calendar invite from last week.
I
did
did
say
too.
that.
I didn't go in through the link, but I did get the 1 hour reminder. But I deleted it because I knew I already had it. So
Patty, can you hear us? Patty, can you hear us?
I don't think she can. I just
see
sent
her.
I sent her a chat.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
Okay.
I hear her.
Hey.
Now we have to,
There she
I have a Nicole.
okay, we're working on that.
Nancy, yes, the reminder that I got does have a link. I didn't use that, but it does have the link.
Yeah, because you can also get in from the agenda.
Yeah,
Right,
but
or the
but then you're-
original. Well, I
but then you're
tried
only a
one of the
participant.
agendas. I had like 3 from Christie and some of them didn't seem to be a live link. So I just went back to the original invite.
Same here.
Who did that original invite come from? Was it from Zoom or it was from Chris?
Zoom.
Oh, gosh. The one today was from Chagrin Falls. And
Okay.
the original one was,
Participant. Something.
I think it was Christie.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I realized what I did wrong. I joined as a participant, I guess. Sorry, guys.
Well, you are a participant.
Right. But I used the agenda one.
Yeah, same. You
Oh,
have to
yeah.
be a panel.
It does, the original one does say you're going to get your own personal link, which is why I didn't try to do it from the new one or from
Got it.
the 3 agendas that we got. Each had it and I didn't think it would work right. So I just always go back. The other one was from Christie, Nancy.
Okay.
Okay, so should we start or?
I think
Not
we're
yet.
good. I think we got everybody promoted up and we're rolling.
No, it looks like you're on YouTube too. There you
Yes.
go, Patty.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so we'll call the August 17th, 2020 meeting of the Chagrin Falls Planning and Zoning Commission to order. We have on our agenda to approve minutes from the meeting of January 20th, 2020, which were being revised. And those were sent out, I think, on July 27th by email, I think from Linda. So did everybody see those and have any further comments?
I read
Um,
both sets. The one that we're approving is the one that has the interesting font as well as the attachment, right? Attachments, is that right?
I would have to look at it again.
I thought we were correcting the kind of chatty nature of it and the strange font, but
Oh, okay, so it was the other one. I read them both, so got it.
there was one that it was like, we had asked for more, I think, and it was like a verbatim transcript of
Right.
all of our chatter.
And then I gave her, I dropped off to her all the revisions that I had because it was just too much. It was easier and it was supposed to be a clean copy,
Clean
but
one.
I don't have it in front of me. But I did look at it and it looked fine.
Judy, and it did
Okay.
have the attachment, Julie's attachment with the minutes. I think that was beneficial, or do you not care, Patty?
I just don't remember because I don't have it downstairs here with me. Once we got the agenda, I just make a note if I've already read them and approved them and I don't have any changes, I didn't bring it down with me. So
All right,
can't tell you.
I'm good.
We can, do you recall if they had that originally, an attachment, Nicole?
Yeah, I have two on my screen. Yes,
Yeah.
the one that was really verbose had the attachment
Okay.
and the other one didn't.
Okay, okay.
so-
I
So are
think
you-
it's probably,
Are you suggesting, Nicole, that we add the attachment? We can approve the minutes, but ask to add the attachment?
Yeah, I think that might be. a
What
good idea.
attachments were on the January minutes?
The attachment about porches, the work that both
was from Jan-
that Julie did as well as Ken Tuso.
That was January?
Yes.
I think whatever attachment was in the January minutes belongs with the revised minutes. I think probably there weren't any
Oh.
changes to that part of the document. So
Correct.
I think we were only sent the revised
Minutes
text of
themselves.
So I'd move to approve the minutes of January 20th, 2020 as revised and sent out on July 27th with the specification that they should include the attachment that was with the original minutes.
I'll
Ah,
second.
All right. Rogoff,
Aye.
Pelosi,
Aye.
Feniger,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Baker.
Aye. Okay, so the only other thing we have on our agenda tonight is looking at the River House development again. So as you all remember from last time, the change from attached buildings to detached buildings changed the zoning designation that applies to the development. So Rob and Dale worked to re-review the project and come up with the zoning review letter that was sent to Mr. Brickman on August 12th that we all received. And it has a number of things that don't fit zoning. And some of those things planning and zoning can modify, as we granted modifications for this project before. And then some of them require Board of Zoning appeals. So that is our task tonight, is to look at these planning and zoning relevant parts of the project and decide how to deal with those. They pretty much fall into two categories. The first one is about the road, which is regulated under Chapter 1161. And then the remaining ones are about lot size and yard setbacks.
Patty?
So,
Patty, I do have all of the pertinent documents for this that I could bring up on the screen and screen share if you like. I have their flat
that would be great.
submission, all the review letters, whatever you like,
Yeah.
just let me know.
Yeah, no, that's great. Anybody who wants to see anything, chime in. I don't know, should we go in order and tackle the road, which is number one on the zoning review letter first? This says it's gonna, there'd be some input from the municipal engineer on the road and what modifications we would need to grant for that.
Can I ask one question here? Is Julie Linder supposed to be in the meeting? I see she's not on.
No,
I don't believe,
She was
She's
for a
not-
second.
she's
Okay,
on vacation.
okay.
I can text her and see if she's intending to join. You don't think she's intending to join?
No, I don't. I don't think she's in town.
Because like Rob, I saw her on for a second or two and then she was gone.
You saw Julie on?
I thought so, but I don't see her now. Maybe it was Judy I saw rather than Julie, but yeah. Okay, never mind.
She is on the participants list right now, so she is present. We're working on moving her up.
Are you
Okay.
sharing those documents, Rob, or should we look for them?
You're muted, Rob.
Rob, you're muted.
I know, I'm talking with Joan in the other room, trying to get her moved up, sorry. Okay, Julie's not on our list right now. She was briefly and is off, so I don't know. We'll keep monitoring it. If she appears, we'll move her up. Oh,
Do you have advice, Rob? Should we deal with the road first?
yeah, we can deal with the roadway first. There was some, the original review of this looked at the roadway as both a driveway and as a roadway. And after discussion with Dale and the Brickhouse team, and as well as Tim Lannon, we decided that moving this forward and considering it a private road would be the most appropriate for moving it through the process here for what was proposed. Tim has done some review on the roadway specifications, and he can speak to that tonight as far as his recommendations on that issue.
Tim, can you tell us, give us a lay of the land for the road?
Yeah, from what I can tell, I mean, to me, this is either a shared driveway with mutual easements to the various condo owners or unit owners, or a private road. So that's kind of just the zoning aspect. And to me, it doesn't matter to me. I just thought we would take the higher pavement standard and just apply it because village utilities will be underneath it. And our code is outdated as far as pavement requirements. So we provided something in our most recent plan comments that would just interpret and provide a modern interpretation of the code. So we just stated certain ODOT materials and thicknesses that would be equivalent of what was in the most recent code revision. So maybe the biggest question is the zoning aspect of whether it's a private road or a simple shared driveway.
On our zoning review letter, it's making it sound like it's going to be a private road. Is that correct, Rob?
That was our discussion, yes.
Okay. So when it says the proposed specifications for the private road do not meet the regulations in chapter 1161. So I guess the question is what specifications do not meet the regulations that are specified? Just those, the engineering, like
Just-
the thickness of the pavement and that sort of thing that,
Yes, correct.
Rob, it's also the utilities are not, they're
Right.
under the road, they're not on the sides.
so normally you'd ask, it's required to have the utilities on the side so that you can access them.
Right, outside of the pavement boundary. And these are located because of the site dynamics. The utilities are located under the pavement.
So Dale, is that all the stuff in the development agreement about, that's why that's all in the development agreement about access and who pays for it and all that?
Well, it's also in the CCRs and it's going to be in the plat. In the dedication language in the plat, it's going to grant easements to us, but it's going to provide that the unit owners are going to be required to fix
So
the
you screen
pavement.
share. I need to be able to do that. So you stop screen sharing and allow me to screen share. Stan,
Thanks, Rob. Anyhow,
sorry.
so that's all right.
Okay, but that is all apropos of what we were just saying about
Yeah.
the access.
So
So
the
you've
plat will,
handled that issue.
right. Yeah, the CCRs and the plat will take care of it.
Okay.
Can you show sheet number 4 or 5, maybe 4?
Yes, I'm working on screen sharing. We have a technical issue. We'll
Yep,
do it as soon as
when
we
you
can.
can. Okay. So Tim, did you review this, like with that aspect of it in mind about the utilities being underneath the roadway?
No, that was, I think, that was, I believe, Rob's comment on that plan.
Yeah. And do you have any concerns about their plan with respect to that?
No, because the development agreement Dale has covered with that if any repairs are necessary to the utilities, which they will be eventually, maybe not for 50 years, but that pavement repair is the responsibility of the property owners. So the village will do the repairs or cause them to be made and then charge the property owners, and there's provisions for that in the agreement.
But like the placement of, like the depth of where everything's gonna be.
Right. Yep.
That's all
Utilities
drawn
are well
out
under
there.
control as far as size, location, depth, all of that.
Just a general question, Dale, like this homeowners agreement will expire. It says in
The-
20 years.
You talking about the declaration?
I thought it was the CCRs or the
Right.
HOA.
Yeah, no, the CCRs they automatically renew and they can't terminate them without the village's consent.
Okay.
I'll pull that
20
up.
years is actually sort of a short time in the scheme of things.
I mean, I usually use 50, but it doesn't matter. It could be 10, 20, it could be anything, as long as there's an automatic renewal. It used to be because of the rule against perpetuities was a life in being plus 21 years that we had to come up with this magic language, and by statute that's gone, but there's issues now with the Marketable Title Act. So by having easements in the document and having automatic renewals, you avoid the Marketable Title Act issues. So that's basically where that language comes from. But if you look at, I'm trying to scroll to it, there's a section that talks about amendment, that it can't be done without, you can't terminate it without the village's approval.
Dale, I can share that screen if you'd like me, if you tell me what section that is. And which document, whether the.
It's in the declaration. I scrolled too far. Let me go back.
Pretty far down.
It's in Article 14. That would be on page 32 of 50. If you have a Word version, if you have a PDF, it might be different. So what Patty's talking about is in section 14.1. And it says it's in effect for 20 years, but then right after it says it automatically renews for successive 10-year periods unless amended or provided in this article. And Article 14 then goes on to say that you can't amend certain sections and you can't terminate it without the village's approval.
I take it this is sort of standard for developments that have homeowners agreements. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I just,
One of my questions was here and a couple other places where you talk about the village's approval, should it say written approval?
I think well, the village doesn't act orally. The village can only act by either acts of council by legislation, or if, for example, if the planning commission or board of zoning appeals that authority, they have to act through their approved minutes. So I'm not concerned about that.
Okay.
I think there, sometimes we'll put in a provision that says that, whenever any amendment or approvals are required, it requires, written action.
I just want to make sure that, 10 years or 20 years or wherever from now, that somebody can point back to a specific, sometimes we have trouble going back in the minutes or the notes and finding really specific language. We have fixed that now, but in the past, we didn't always have very specific language that allowed us to be definitive about what had been decided. So that's why I thought with some of this, requiring it in writing might help make sure that happens.
Well, yeah, I mean, any action by the village has to be by the village council unless otherwise indicated in the documents. And they could act by motion, but that's still going to be in minutes.
Right.
That'll be approved.
All right. Just a question.
Yeah, and if you're looking for the termination language, it's in 14.3.1.
Yeah, I guess I'm just having a little bit of trouble with this road thing because we don't know the specific things that we would be modifying. Like, we don't have any language in front of us saying you're supposed to have, 6-inch pavement and they're proposing 4 or something. Other than you guys have said specifically that the utilities being under the pavement is something that we need to allow that's not normally allowed. But I'm looking in 1161 and trying to find exactly what we're supposed to be modifying.
Yeah, I mean, which sections of 1161?
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff about roads in, there's stuff about street design in 1161.05E. But I think that's public.
No, it was under the section that, make sure sections I referred to were under the construction standards. So hold on.
It's under 1161.05.
I think it was passed.
I'm sorry, 1161.06, the ones you're
06,
thinking
yeah.
of. Yeah. And as Tim says, those are outdated.
It was under, I believe, 1161.06. Let's see. J and K and L refer to the streets upgrade, street base course, and street surface course. And then also the N, the full depth asphalt pavement. The spec that Tim had revised incorporates all of these elements just with some different spec characteristics that are updated to the current code, the current ODOT spec.
So for us to modify these things, we would be modifying them to fit what Tim is recommending.
I believe so, yes.
It's not that the developer is asking for a lesser standard than what's here in our code. It's that we would be modifying to fit Tim.
That's correct.
That's correct.
This is Jordan Burns, counsel for the developer here. Thanks for everybody's time tonight. We appreciate it. Just to be clear, our plans included proposed specifications for this private road. I think, Rob, you may have started to bring those up on the screen, and then we moved on to the declaration. Are the specs that the village engineer is proposing different from the specs in those plans?
There's some slight differences. We're still working on the details of that.
Gotcha.
In terms of street width, are they fine? Is the width of the street shall be 26 feet measured from the back of curb to the back of curb and centered in the right of way.
Let me take a look at that. Hold on.
It seems like there's a lot of things in here, actually, like
Yeah, there's-
sidewalk. There won't be sidewalks. There won't be street trees planted at regular intervals
Right.
along this street. Seems like there's a lot of details in this 116106 that will need modification.
Okay. Street width, I believe, is under the 26 foot for the entire length of the pavement.
Okay, so that's. I just feel like it's hard for us to,
You need more of a breakdown of all of the details on that.
well, I don't know, what does everybody else think on the commission? I just feel like number one on the zoning review letter is kind of vague, that it doesn't fit the specifications in 1161, and that we can authorize modifications to those requirements. And then it said that, you know, we'd be getting more information at this meeting. You know, I feel like we don't have the information. We could go ahead and modify it and say that, you know, we're fine with whatever Tim and the developer work out, but I'm a little bit nervous to be saying I grant modifications to things that I don't know what those things are.
Okay,
But anybody else from the commission want to chime in and
Same thing. I was thinking
Yeah,
the same thing. The letter, which is terrific, Rob, the letter that outlines to Brick House exactly what is being done and also who has to do it. Some of them are us and some BZA. That was very helpful. But that number one, which said we'll receive more information tonight, I just thought, well, it's vague because you're still working on it and we would hear more tonight about the specifics of what the modifications are.
right. And we received our updated review specs from Tim last week. We're working through those details right now. I can get you a more detailed breakdown when we work out these
Yeah.
details.
yeah, if you could do that, you know, and I guess if 116106 is the code section for this type of road in this type of zoning district, I'm not sure that that's the case, but if you and Dale have determined that's the relevant section, then we kind of need to go through the section point by point and check out their plan versus Tim's requirements and come up with, you know, what needs to be modified. And we
Okay,
need to have, because we need to make a motion like, okay, they're supposed to have a 26-foot width and we are granting them a modification for 20-foot width or whatever it might be,
okay,
but we don't have that information right now.
okay.
Patty, it's Dale. At some point, we were going to say to you tonight that the commission needs to have another meeting very soon in the next week or so. And I think that you'll see by the time we're done tonight that that's warranted. And at that time, hopefully Tim could give a a comprehensive list of what's required that you could then, latch right into a motion as to that specific item to modify.
Okay, yeah, I'm not trying to be difficult or hold things up in any way, but like
Yeah.
I said, I feel really uncomfortable voting to modify on things that we don't know what they are. So, all right,
Okay.
so can we assume we'll move that to the next step of things and go on to the yards, which is number 3 on the zoning review letter,
Sure.
unless anybody wants to talk about the road more.
Yeah, can I say something? It's Alexandra Yonkov at Brick House. So can I just take a step back and see what was the difference between the driveway? I know this was discussed before and I wasn't at the meeting before, but the major difference in what influenced to take road versus driveway. Because these are the major differences in my opinion of the structure. And can we just talk about that a little bit?
Well, let me try and answer that first.
Yeah.
You couldn't do this as a driveway with shared easements without getting variances from the Board of Zoning Appeals. So we were trying to keep as much as we could in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay.
And from what we could see from the subdivision regulations, it intended for this type of layout to be a private road.
Okay.
So we were trying to fit it within our code, albeit the code's a little old.
Mhm.
If you went in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals, they would, you'd have to then if you got approval, then you'd have to create cross easements between them.
Okay.
And then you'd have issues that we'd have to deal with that would make the CCRs even more complicated.
Okay, that all makes sense, but essentially the functionality of this is the same as a driveway, as a shared driveway. The
I
use
wouldn't,
of it.
I
The
wouldn't
use
agree
of
with that.
I'm sorry?
I wouldn't agree with that. You got 6 homes using the same driveway. I don't consider that a driveway. I consider that a private road.
Mhm. Okay, just wanted to clarify this.
And I know also when it came to the pavement thickness, our engineer review looked at the utilities being under that and the ability of us to maintain the utilities with equipment, jetters, whatnot, and the impact of that equipment if it had to access that area to repair the utilities.
Mhm.
So I know pavement thickness is a part of that.
Okay, and between Tim and Mike and our team, is there any possibility we can quickly just list the major difference? I mean, the major differences today, so that the board members know what we're looking at. What I'm asking this question is because I'm trying to help and expedite things a little bit and try to solve as many questions as possible today. So if there is any information that Tim and Mike could explain to the board members so they have more information about the changes, I think that would help them.
Yeah, again, just to sort of play off of Alex's comments, this is Jordan Burns again. As I said earlier, there are specs for what we proposed for whether it's a private drive or private street. The specs identified in our plans are the same. So for instance, there was reference to road width and the question was whether we meet those requirements, and the answer is no. But that's all set out in the specifications included in our plans. So if it's helpful to go over those specifications here, just so that the board understands what it is we're proposing and how we anticipate it functioning, we're happy to do that.
I would feel more comfortable if we had a compare and contrast before, so that we can be more specific when we are speaking about and voting on the modification.
It might actually be faster. It would be a very long meeting, I think, to go through every every subsection of chapter 116106 right now and look at your plans and talk to Tim about it. It might be easier for the relevant parties, you guys, to go through it and present whatever in a week or whatever, the points that we need to vote on. But you're right. I think I don't think the road or driveway, whatever it is, this paved area hasn't changed substantially, I don't think, from what we've seen in the past. But from our position, we have to make an official motion to modify these particular parts of the code. And it's hard to do that if we don't have it in front of us, what we're modifying. So just to step back too, Rob said to me that all the modifications that we granted to this project before, like in 2018 or 2019, I can't remember. I think it was 2018 actually, still hold. Is that correct?
No, I don't think so. This is a totally different plan.
But that was like the setbacks of the 35 feet on the east end and the 20 feet on the south end and that sort of thing.
Yeah, those,
Dale, are they still in play?
it depends on which one it is, but the ones you just cited, yes. Like the front setback from the road or the rear setback for unit 6, those modifications, same thing with the determination of where you have to set back from the slope, those all still remain in place.
Okay. What about, there were some points relevant to the road. So there was 113004A3, means of ingress and egress. There was something about 113009E, pedestrian circulation, talking about a walkway system.
Right.
That might be it. So I think we already granted modifications for those things, but they're not relevant anymore, you're saying, or they are?
No, the circulation one is still relevant. The roadway one that you granted is not the same as looking at the subdivision regulation standards. So that was under the zoning code. This is under the subdivision regs.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to clarify that. I was thinking maybe we could, cut some things out that we had already done, but it sounds like what we need to do is look at the road under 116106 and come up with the specific things that we need to modify.
Right.
Okay, I'll get that review done. I'll get you that information.
So there was more detail for the yard things, I think. So number 3 on the zoning review letter is talking about the front yard setbacks. And it specifically says here about units 3, 4, 5, and 6, which are the single family detached homes. But I believe in conversation with Rob and Dale, we need to add units 1 and 2 to this as well, because we were talking about having a 0 front yard lot line so that it would be common area in front of the buildings. So it sounds kind of drastic to say you're gonna have 0 front yard instead of a 30-foot minimum front yard, but it's because we're having it be common space. And it sounded like the developer was fine with that when we had our last meeting. Does anybody want to discuss this? Dale, do you recommend we make motions point by point, or?
I think it might be easier to do one motion at the end. At least my brain thinks that way, but if you, but on the other hand, you might say, if we don't grant this one, then it affects how I think about the other. So it's up to you, whatever you feel more comfortable with.
Does anybody on the commission have a strong feeling about that, or an idea about that?
I would do them one by one.
Yeah, I would too.
Before you,
Because the sum total, particularly of all the setbacks, make a very different footprint than than just considering each one individually. So I think, and thank you for the reminder about why the 0 and the 20, because I didn't remember that.
If you're going to vote on them individually, then you need to let everybody testify pro and con about it before you then vote. I was thinking you'd go through all of them, get all the input from everybody, and then you could vote on them. You could vote on them separately or
Okay.
just do
Okay.
them
Okay.
Yeah.
So we can go through and discuss all of them and then come back and make individual motions on each point.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, that's good.
So for me, the 0 front yard setback is fine. What really matters is where the lot line is. So the placement of the building exactly on the lot line is that achieves what we were saying about having it be common area or commonly owned yards. But where that lot line is what's really important then, because that's the setback from the neighboring properties. And it looks like in this plan, they've got their lot lines within what we had previously granted as setbacks. So the 35 feet on the east end and the 20 and everything. So I think this number 3 is just accomplishing what we wanted in terms of having it be common open space.
But with the addition of the other 2
Yes.
units.
As the whole project.
I agree with what Pat is saying or has stated.
So number 4 is, this is something kind of new because the buildings are detached as opposed to what we had seen in the past where they were mostly attached with like one separation between the buildings. So this has side yards now between the lot lines or between the buildings. And they're supposed to have a 3-foot minimum side yard with both sides totaling 8. So in the case of all the side yards that are flanked by 2 buildings, it's 6 in their plan instead of 8. Does anybody want to say anything about that?
The only comment I have is that there were a couple separate units when we approved this. So all this means is that approval applies to more than 2 buildings. It applies to now the 4 buildings.
My question.
And
I mean, our logic and our reasoning was the same last time as it would be today. There's no change, I believe, in why we thought it was okay to approve it then. So I think that it should stand now.
I agree with that, but my question is about the unit 6 with the 3-foot yard setback on the west side. Was that part of what we also said within the footprint?
Somebody point out unit 6, 3 foot, which one?
Isn't it on the east side?
It would be on the east side, the far right.
There's 35-foot setback on the far right, correct?
no, that'll be common open space. The lot will be 3 feet off the building wall.
And then there's the 35. On
The
top of
35 will not be their yard. It will be common open space.
Right.
3 plus 35 or 3?
No, 35 foot to the property line. The building spacing and the property line is right at 35 feet.
Okay, so there is no side yard next to the 35-foot setback.
Correct,
Okay,
on unit 6. And in my review letter, I state that unit 6 is a 3-foot side yard setback on the west side of the building only.
So there is 0 lot line on the east.
On the east, correct.
Okay,
That's in the 35-foot setback
okay.
line.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like these buildings are oversized for the site, but you know, they were attached before, and I think we had in one case, like maybe 1 or 2 separations between buildings, and we had said, I believe we had said 6 feet was okay there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we
I think
did.
so
Uh,
too.
So, you know, it's as you say, Nicole, it's the same idea here, and you've got a few more separations. And I think, Rob, didn't the fire department look into this and say it was okay?
The fire department did. They actually preferred the greater number of separations for greater
For
access to the
egress, right?
hillside area for fire and EMS access. They just asked that nothing be, planted to block or restrict them. I know we've had some discussion recently about air conditioner placement. We believe we can achieve that on the side yard and still have plenty of access around those units without having to put the air conditioner on the river side of the structure, which we all wanted to avoid.
Okay. Did anybody want to talk about the side yards any further? Okay. And then, so number 5 is looking at the rear yard setbacks. So again, we've got the setback is really going to be the 5 feet past the crest of the slope. But in terms of what will be the owned lot of these buildings, there will be a 0 rear yard setback because we're asking them again to put the building or to designate the lot to be coincident with the foundation wall.
If you all look at your screen, the plan that's shown, you can see with the solid line that's between each of the units, that's the property line, and then you can follow that as it goes against the rear of the buildings, and then that'll give you an idea of where the rear property line is on each unit.
Any discussion on that? Okay. And then the only other thing on the zoning review letter that's under our purview is number 8, which is talking about minimum depth. So these are irregularly shaped lots. And they do not fit the code section saying that the depth can't be less than 1.5 times the width. But again, we've sort of created these lots into these irregular shapes by asking them to have the majority of the parcel be, or not the majority, but have the yards be common open space. So my feeling is that this doesn't really apply here and that we could grant that modification. Does anybody want to discuss that about the lot depth?
I agree with what you're saying, Patty.
A general question, Dale, is that we're talking about all this about setbacks from lot lines that don't exist right now. So right now, this is one parcel. How does this happen that, does it get subdivided into these lots first, or how does that process happen?
You mean like the chicken and the egg? This is,
Yeah.
Because it's going to be a plat that will get recorded, what you're granting variances to is what you see on the plat. And I mean, there's no other way to explain it other than that. It's just like with any subdivision that comes along, until those lots are recorded, you're granting variances based on what the developer's planning to develop and what he's asking to develop.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then what will the zoning be for this after this change takes place?
A very significant non-conforming property that if anybody wants to do something different in the future, they're going to need to get variances for. Or
So it'll remain RMU?
yeah, unless the code gets changed again, but until it does, it'll have that zoning designation,
Okay. It just is non-conforming
right?
in many ways. Okay. I had some other, so I guess a big part of this is that to grant these modifications, we had previously talked about having conditions placed upon our approval, which would go into the development agreement and the homeowners association regulations, which I think are being called something different, but I'm not familiar with the terminology. So I don't know how that process is going to work, Dale. Do we talk about that now?
Well, there's a couple different elements. There's the development agreement, which is something that we're not, we're still working on as of late today, and I can't ask you to approve it. You have two choices. Either we come back, let's say in a week or so, and you will have reviewed it, and Jordan Burns and I will have finished it, and you could approve it, or you could approve it contingent upon my review and approval of the changes. The second document is the preliminary and final plats, which will have to be approved at a later meeting. And then the third item is the declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions. And that typically gets done in sync with the final plan approval. So that wouldn't have to be approved tonight either.
So our goal tonight is just to grant modifications on these, or our task tonight is just to grant these modifications according to the zoning review letter, not to do a preliminary plat approval or get into the nitty-gritty of the development agreement or homeowners regs.
Well, you could do preliminary plat approval tonight if you wanted to, conditioned upon variances being granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals if you have already granted the modifications that they need from your board.
All right, well, let's worry about the modifications first, I think.
Okay.
One thing that came up in discussion today was this retaining wall easement. Can you describe what's going on with that and how that impacts anything?
I can answer that. This is Mike Scoletto with Burkhouse. We're looking to get a construction easement just to be able to place that wall in place on that property line. It really isn't, it won't be part of this plat. It's just a separate agreement with the homeowner next door, just so we have a little bit of room to place that wall. We're not infringing upon their property while doing so without their consent.
The wall will be right on the property line?
Yeah, pretty close, like a foot off, like right in that area, the face of it will be.
So what happens if we approve the plat and roadway and everything, and you do not reach an agreement with the neighbor for an easement?
We can find another way to construct it. This is just in a little easier way for us to be able to do it. We'll get it done either way.
Okay. And what's the time frame for that, or who knows? Are you in discussions with them?
Oh yeah, we're talking to the Millers. They want to see what you guys do first. They don't want to grant us an easement without us obtaining approvals. So they don't, okay. They don't want an easement out there if we're not going to develop it, is essentially what it comes down to. So once we get approvals, they've agreed to, from my understanding, is they've agreed to grant us that. So
okay, that's helpful.
Yes, we appreciate it. They're nice people.
So you're in a discussion with them, but you don't have approval. But would the plat change if that easement is not?
We're actually going to take that easement off this plat. That it shouldn't be on the plat. It would just be a private easement between the two homeowners, just as a working, as like a working easement, like a temporary easement that would be in place.
So they'll
Just for
have that removed
construction.
before the final plat comes
Correct.
forward.
So if we are going to do an approval it'll be on two things. One, that gets taken off the plat, the final plat, and that Dale has reviewed it. Am I following?
That I've reviewed the final plat?
Yeah, that's not necessary.
Well, well, Tim and Rob and I will review the plat, but your commission has to approve the final plat.
We have to approve the final plat. We
Yeah,
can't approve it today contingent upon those two things. It has to be approved after it's all done.
Preliminary.
Yeah, we're only at preliminary, yeah.
Okay, so we can do a preliminary approval, and one of the requirements would be that property wall easement is taken off the plat.
Yeah, but it's not just the easement, it's the retaining wall.
Well, the retaining wall
And the
needs to be
retaining
on.
wall is part of, it does have to be part of the preliminary plat, the plat.
Yes.
Well,
So
the retaining wall has to be there, but not the easement.
So is the retaining wall in the correct position if they don't receive an easement?
Yeah, they'll just have to do it first. They'll just have to do it first and put the retaining wall in before they build all the buildings, rather than at the same time.
Well, the
Yeah.
retaining
Yeah, so-
wall is, the retaining wall
Sorry.
is not being removed from the improvement plans. It's just the easement would be removed depending on what happens with the Millers.
So the
And what
position
is
of the wall is
The-
not dependent on the easement.
No, and the easement is not part of the plat because it's not on the property.
Okay.
right, but can they build the wall if they don't get the easement? That's my question.
Right.
Is
He
the wall,
just Mike just said they can.
Yes.
All right.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that answers one thing.
I'd say it'd be very difficult. Whatever the height of the wall is, it's 1 foot off the property line, roughly.
1 foot into their land, into their property, not the Millers. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
so Tim, are you saying that they cannot build it without an easement?
I'm just saying it'd be very difficult. I mean, it's tight, so. But nothing's impossible. It's entirely on the development parcel. It's just very close.
Correct.
And if there is no easement, is there protection for their slope while that construction is being done, Tim? There being the neighbors.
The
Yeah.
building- Yeah.
I mean, that's part of the geotechnical review is
Okay.
that they will look at conditions during construction, which is the worst part. And then the wall would be designed to hold the property behind it.
Okay.
Tim, I have a question. What happens if 25 years from now they need to repair that wall? Can they do it without an easement?
I mean, theoretically, if you can build it initially, then that should leave enough room.
Okay.
I think we're chicken and egg again. So I guess my question is, and I understand that the Millers don't want to have an easement if, until they know that all the rest of this stuff is being handled, but perhaps if we're going to have a week and meet again and see all this, if they would be told our intent from what we have approved tonight contingent on there being an easement, then that might take the objection away from them and they could complete the easement. So then we could go ahead, see what I'm saying?
I'm not sure that that's correct. I've talked to the Millers a couple times and they're very concerned about this and they're concerned about their property. And easement or not, this is very close to their property. They're concerned about it. And I think we should be too.
So then that's a different issue.
And well, that's not the impression that I've had from them regarding the easement.
I
Right.
think they would want the retaining wall. Wouldn't that protect their yard and property? I think they want that retaining wall well before, I mean,
The
I think it's
concern-
a benefit to the Millers.
When I spoke to Mr. Miller, he stated that he wanted to know first that our engineer had reviewed and approved the design and placement of the wall. And that's what his concern was moving forward, and that his yard would be protected in the design of what was proposed. And that's what we're in the process of finalizing now.
Okay, so do you think within, if you're asking us to have another special meeting in a week or two, will you have conveyed that, gotten that information together and gotten it to the Millers such that maybe this issue could have been resolved?
We're working in that direction. I can't tell you for sure. There's too many unknown variables. We are working towards that. We have a meeting scheduled tomorrow between Tim and myself and the developer to review the engineering review and the geotechnical report and discuss those items as we're moving forward.
And I feel like we need to see that information from our engineer and you guys before we vote on that particular issue. I wouldn't want it contingent on something that I really don't know anything about yet.
I also am concerned that we have a missing party in this discussion, and that would be the Millers.
And I
Again-
believe they were not able to attend the meeting tonight.
Again, I just want to, this is for constructability purposes, this easement that shows up on there, it's not on the property that we're building these homes on. This is just a construction easement to make it a little bit easier on us to construct this, is all that easement's for. It's not to help stabilize it. That easement doesn't have anything to do with the stabilization of the soils or anything like that. The wall is what stabilizes it, not the easement. The easement is just for constructability of the wall, and that's it. We can do this without that easement. It would be more, it would cost us more money. It would be, it's just more optimum to have this easement for us to construct it. This has nothing to do with the stability of the soil. We've submitted plans for our geotechnical report, and I know we still have some stuff to work through with Tim that he wants to see a little bit more on, but we're confident that between the geotechnical and structural engineers, we can design this wall so that it properly holds up the rest of this wall. Again, this is kind of the tallest section here. It's a roughly 5 foot. So that's the tall section at the very end, and it tapers down to about 2 foot down by Cleveland Street. So it's not, we're not talking a substantial wall. It's pretty minimal, especially as it tapers down towards Cleveland Street. So again, this easement isn't to make this soil stable. It's just for constructability purpose.
Right, but we still need to see that information on the wall from our engineer.
Or we can say it's contingent upon our engineers approval.
But we don't, well, I would like to know what it is and see it before I approve it.
Know what is. If the Millers are waiting for our approval and we sit around and wait for their approval, nothing's gonna happen.
I'm not convinced that they're waiting for our approval.
They may be waiting for the engineer's report, though.
That's what Rob.
Which we've supplied, and we just received comments back on Friday, I believe. We turned it in weeks ago, and we just received it back on Friday. So we have a meeting, as Rob stated, on tomorrow to discuss this. Any additional items that Tim wants to see, and we're working through those comments. So Tim can't, or we won't be able to build without the hillside permit, which is part of this, the geotechnical report and things like that. So without Tim's approval on that, we can't get the hillside permit.
Yeah, I think there's, and I understand the commission's concern about the neighbors, and I certainly don't want to take anything away from that. But with regard to the issues that were here before this commission tonight on, I guess I'm a little unclear on its relationship to those issues. We've got a series of modifications. I think there was actually one that was passed over inadvertently, item 2 on the lot coverage. But we've got those issues and we've got the discussion regarding the plat, which may or may not, the preliminary plat that may or may not be approved tonight. But the retaining wall itself isn't part of the plat and isn't really part of the modifications here. I understand the concern over it, but like Mike says, and hopefully Tim agrees, that one way or another, that's going to have to be constructed, whether it's taking advantage of an easement or not, and that addressing that is going to be a condition of the approval that's granted, so that if we've got to make a change because the easement isn't available, then we'll make that change.
So we could move,
If we're being, so the individual items are one thing, the numbered items, that's fine. But if we're gonna be asked to approve a preliminary plat, I don't think we have enough information. And it would have to be contingent on too many things to approve a preliminary plat. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm
And
really
it's
comfortable
one of those things.
with the points in the zoning review letter. It's that when you look at the package of materials, the new plans that were submitted to us, and we think about what we would want in a development agreement, there's a lot more there. And to approve a plat, although the easement's not part of the plat, if it affects the retaining wall, then we can't approve a plat without knowing what's going on with the retaining wall. And if you can say for sure 100% that this exact retaining wall that's been approved by Tim and it's been approved by Architectural Board of Review will still be constructed regardless of the easement, I guess that's one thing. But you want to approve a plat that has this retaining wall, and then you're not able to construct it in an economically feasible way without the easement. You don't get the easement, and then you suddenly have to change, I don't know what the wall looks like, how it's constructed. I don't even know after the fact. So that's all unknown at this point.
could we not say that we would approve the preliminary plat with that easement removed?
Yeah, we could do that.
Because it's not on the plat itself, it's shown on the.
It's not the easement, it's the retaining wall. We don't have, here.
Oh, in addition to that, we need more
Forgetting
information.
about the easement, we don't have the information on the retaining wall. We don't have that from the engineer. So, and actually, the letter isn't really asking us to approve a preliminary plat tonight. So maybe we can just go through the items, paragraph, let's see, 1, 3, whichever the 3 or 4 paragraphs.
4,
and vote on them.
5.
And I misspoke. I now see that the 2 is a variance.
2 is a variance, right?
So
I could address one more big issue with the retaining wall, depending on the official date of this application and the plans in front of the board. In August of 2019, council passed an ordinance stating retaining walls must be 3 feet from the property line plus 1 foot for every height above 3 feet. So that would mean a 6-foot wall needs to be 6 feet from a property line per the ordinance passed in 2019.
So that
So that-
wall will be a variance.
Is that
Yeah.
in our zoning?
What section is that, Tim?
Yeah, I remember
11
that. Yeah, that's
1148.07.
Anything over 3 feet.
overhaul.
One at a time.
Walls and hedges, I think it's 1148 maybe.
Correct, 1148.07.
Rob, can you bring that up on the?
I don't have the code to bring up. Hold on. That's gonna take a bit.
Yeah, it's okay. It's
I'll grab it.
reading it verbatim.
Rob, was that wall reviewed by the Architectural Review Board?
Yes.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so under E, 114807E, it also has to have a hedge, fence, or rail at the top edge of the wall. Is that shown in the plans?
I do not know off the top of my head.
No, it is not.
I don't think so. I don't recall seeing that. I watched the architecture board meeting.
Yeah,
There is a fence on the
that.
property line.
Yeah, it was just at the last meeting or the one before that.
Yeah, no, there's no railing on the top of it.
I don't think you'd want one in this situation. I don't. Well, anyways, it sounds like that's another item for BZA. Or can we modify that, Dale?
I don't believe so, but let me verify that.
Was that part of the overhaul, guys?
Yes,
Yes,
Do I remember that?
no,
we all should.
Did you
Right.
remember?
earlier.
You
Yeah.
remembered it, Wendy?
Yeah.
Well, I just read it.
remember-
I went back and reviewed the walls a few weeks ago and that fences, walls and hedges. So,
Well, then that sabotages the entire plot, the whole plan.
Well,
Can I ask this question? It's Alexandra as well. So that what we're talking about right now is something, a change that happened in 2019. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so we started the process in 2018, I think, and it has been a year and a half. I think if we continue like this, we're gonna catch all the changes in 2019 and 2020 and maybe 2021. I mean, when we started the process and there's some timing that this was discussed at the very beginning, that wall has been always there.
Dale,
And I think it went through all of them.
So does it impact the start of construction or is it the start of the project, the first time we looked at it? When does the date impact plans like this?
Well, they changed the plan. It's a different project today than it was last year. So in my view, that section still now applies, and they have to comply with it or get a variance.
We did submit this for P&Z a while ago, and it was approved, administratively, and that was I can pull up the exact date, but we talked about this before. We tried to apply, and it was said it was approved administratively, and that's why it's now before you today. You guys thinking it's new, but this is not new. This is a year and a half old. That the people at the village have been looking at this and us believing that this has been approved because we were told that. So this is not anything new. In fact, this is well before your revisions. So to me, this isn't a new submission. I beg to differ, Dale, because we did submit this a long time ago.
Well, the changes went in August of last year.
Yeah.
I guess, Mike, we disagree.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
I think that's not really this commission's role to figure that out. I think the council from the village and the developer will have to figure out what applies and what doesn't apply. To me, we made these changes to our zoning code for a reason, because we felt they were appropriate. We've provided means for relief from anything in the zoning code through Board of Zoning Appeals or our commission. But we need the administration and Dale to tell us, you know, what we can modify, what BZA can modify, what's even relevant. And if this point is decided that it's not relevant because of timing, that's fine. But I don't think it's planning and zoning's. I don't feel like I have any expertise to add to this discussion of what's
Just want to get the date. What date was that preliminary approval, Rob, that you did?
I'll have to
The
go back.
administrative, was it
I'll
in
have to go back
18?
and review because that was reviewed initially as we moved along, and those parts that of the project that stayed the same, you know, they built on and changed other aspects, and we did the zoning review based on what was changed and modified to their plan. This wall was, as like Mike said, it was indicated on very early on plans, and I think at one point only a very long time ago was modified to be a lot shorter in height as the topography changed at the site. So originally it was a much taller wall at the very onset, I think back in 2017 through 2018, prior to this code changing, that's when it modified into what it is now. And that's why it wasn't part of the zoning review now, as it was my understanding that it was, it met the code when it was designed. But I mean, I'll get with Dale and we'll discuss that, but that was where my approach was.
Well, just what's the date of that email where you did administrative approval? Just tell us the date.
April 4th of 2019.
19,
Yep.
April of 19, and this was changed
In August of
August of 19, Dale?
Correct.
So, I
But
mean,
what
Yeah.
plan was preliminary approved in April?
April.
This
yeah,
one,
It was a site plan, yes.
this
site
current
plan
one,
with a retaining wall.
correct.
Pla-
This is-
Planning and
this-
zoning didn't see this plan in April of
We
19.
No.
didn't, Nancy, but Rob did. And Rob gave it administrative approval, and we either sit here and say, well, then that doesn't count, or we have to.
I don't think-
That plan that went back in April, again, I'm speaking without having a chance to review this and make sure I'm fine, is that was the site plan that was based on all the setbacks that were granted by P and
Prior
Z.
to,
And then I sent that back for review and saying, does this conform? Does P and Z need to see the site plan again? That was sent to Patty and to Nancy, to Dale at the time. And the feedback at that time was the site plan meets the setbacks and requirements of what was approved by planning and zoning. So the site plan is not needed to go before the board again. Now they can go forward, prepare the plat, go through the ARB process for the structures and move forward. And that's the way we viewed it. At some point, when the plan changed from mostly attached single family to detached single family, that was the misstep on my behalf, on the village's behalf, and not catching the zoning code changes that triggered. And that's why we, after the last meeting, that's why we met and we came up with the modifications that would be needed based on the change from the ASF to the detached single family. And we're trying to guide that, the plan forward as it's before you now. But the site plan was based on the original setbacks that were granted. Now, granted, there was a difference originally in the style of buildings. The last review, when that was given to proceed with the project, as Michael stated, was based on the setbacks and approvals of the site plan. It
And
didn't
it
have
had the
wall,
retaining-
it had wall placement location. It didn't have the details of that. And that was,
Okay.
that's what was provided recently, but location
It
of
had
it,
the
yes.
retaining, Rob, it had the retaining wall 1 foot from the property line.
Mhm.
Yes or no?
I would have to go back and review that and confirm that. I don't have that in front of me.
Well, why don't you do that? Because we've now come back on an emergency meeting again because of this situation. I think, go ahead and pull it up. From April 4th, what was administratively approved.
Dale, Dale, can
If-
you weigh in here? Would this
Sure.
be an issue for planning and zoning or BZA?
It would be an issue for BZA anyway.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter what the old plan said, if it was a foot away or not.
Why not?
Because at that time, we didn't have that requirement in the code. Now, there was a requirement about walls. I just don't remember what it said.
I have
But
the old one.
yeah,
I couldn't find this section at all in the old code.
Yeah, it's in the old code.
But if it was approved administratively where it is right now,
Alexandra, hold on a second.
okay.
But my point was that I think Patty or Wendy was asking, does it make a difference to you? And the answer is, in my view, I don't care what happened a year ago, and I don't care how far that wall was, and I don't care what the regulation was a year ago. What I care about is that a different plan was presented to you after the code was changed in 2019. And therefore, in my opinion, they have to comply with the requirements that were adopted after August of 19, if a variance wasn't already granted to something by the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Yeah, you know, here, not surprisingly, I suppose, I just, without knowing the details of the administrative approval, I disagree, Dale, for the exact reason that at the very start of this meeting, somebody asked what approvals that had previously been granted by the Planning Commission were still in force. And I think it was you who said it depends on which approvals they are, whether they relate to something that's still part of the plan or whether they relate to something that's been varied. And as Mike said, and I think Rob agreed, that what's happened here is amendments, revisions to plans have been presented to the village that were based on previously reviewed and in some instances approved plans or had features that were approved, with the understanding that where features weren't approved or where there were, the desire to separate the units, we would move forward and revise the plan appropriately, but not that in each instance we were then going back to square one. That's not the basis on which we've proceeded in front of the Planning Commission or in front of the BZA or any other or administratively. It's always been that we're taking the approvals that have been obtained and where we're not making a revision that affects those approvals, we're proceeding to get the additional approvals that we need.
Okay, what I'm saying is that if a modification was granted by the Planning Commission previously, I'm saying they can still apply that if it still works for the plan, or if a variance was granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals. The wall never had any kind of modification or variance. So there's
That
nothing.
wasn't necessary at the time, Dale.
Correct.
Because it says fences, walls, and hedges shall not exceed 8 feet of height. That's all it says.
That's my recollection too. It was different, but
It says,
so what I'm
mean,
saying
there's-
is there's
And it
no.
says that we have control. It says shall be located subject to the approval of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
But we never talked about it, I don't believe.
No, we didn't.
No, there was no modification or variance on the wall.
No, but it just says subject to our approval. So
No, that was, but it's still, there was no administrative action taken to grant relief that would still be binding. I mean, it sounds weird because you actually are stuck with things that didn't comply with the code. And unfortunately on their side, they're not able to argue, in my opinion, that they can rely on things that did meet the code before, but no longer meet the code.
I don't know, to me, they're coming to us with this plan today, wanting to get a building permit. And we have our zoning code as it stands today. I feel like to grant a building permit based upon the code that existed previous to now doesn't make any sense. But if they had been granted a building permit in April of 2019 and then changes were made to the zoning code, of course, those should not be, if they had gotten final plat approval in April of 2019, then of course zoning changes made in August of 2019 wouldn't apply. But this is the plan that's in front of us today.
But if they're in the process, there's got to be some grandfathering rule. I mean, this is crazy because
They
this,
were in the process for, it's been for 3.5 years. They can't expect, you can't expect the village and, everything to stay the same for, I don't know. Like I said, this is not,
I know.
I have any expertise. It's just common sense to me that we would review this under the code that we have in place today. But Dale, I think this is for you to tell us what to do,
I already did.
which is,
That they need a variance for the wall.
okay,
they
well,
need a
that's
variance
not,
for the wall from BZA,
Correct.
even
Oh,
though,
yeah,
even,
well, and I
even
looked at
if
the
we're-
code. I looked
Yeah.
at the code section. I don't think you have the power to modify this one.
right. So it's BZA, not us.
Right.
okay,
When I reviewed this wall, I looked under, originally it was under 114805, fences, walls and hedges in residential districts.
Right.
And it
So
does
they-
comply with those requirements.
and is there any document, Rob, that you sent to this prospective builder that approved the wall
No.
before the August date?
No.
You
and
didn't
that
reference the
specifically
wall
calls
in
out
any
the
way?
wall. No,
Does not
Just-
call out the wall?
right.
Then it does, then Dale's right, then it needs,
And then what other walls are on the property? Isn't there another retaining wall? Or it's called a landscape wall. Do we have, does anything have to happen with that? I thought it was shown somewhere. By unit 1, is there a wall?
Oh, no, those were discussed after the last meeting and they were taken out. We thought those would be landscape walls, but the developer said those were not, and they were removed on this revised.
Okay, well, there's,
No. This dark line is actually a landscape wall. It's
Oh, okay.
just a short wall to hold back that just from building 1 towards Cleveland Street.
that's gonna be, sorry, a couple feet?
Yes, it'd be roughly, we'll say, off the top of my head, like 3 foot.
Okay, so that needs to be looked at, Rob, as well, how that fits with the zoning code. I don't know how that's gonna be regulated in terms of property line, because setback from a property line, because
there are no property lines.
the common open space, I guess.
Yeah, it's in the comments.
I'll have to see if it meets the definition of a retaining wall or a landscape wall. There is a difference the way the code reads.
And then is there gonna be, where the walkway going down to, or the drive going down to the river? Isn't there an existing wall at the riverbank? Over by unit, I don't know, 5 and 6 maybe?
Yeah, it shows on the plat.
Yeah, what is that?
That's no
It's an
longer.
existing wall.
And nothing's gonna be done there?
No, in fact, you guys made it so that we can't do anything on that hillside, so we really can't touch that wall. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know if, the ground is stable as it sits. Removing that wall could change that.
I thought I had seen on one rendition of elevations, maybe from BZA or maybe from the Realtor or something. It looked like a newer retaining wall. So I didn't know if you had plans to.
Yeah, no, when we do renderings, it's hard to get exact details. It's hard to make
Okay.
something look old when on a computer when they're doing.
So that's not relevant. Are there any other retaining walls on the property?
No, not that I know of.
Patty, this is Harry. Patty, if I can just chime in there, this is Harry. There was some renderings on their plans that went in front of the ABR that showed a retaining wall that I asked them to remove, and they have so. So That's been.
You
gone.
mean down by the river there where it,
River. There is a structure down there that's been there. It's just a footer that used to house something for the paper mill or something like that. It's existing, but they know they can't go down there. They can't touch it. That retaining wall, that color rendering they had with the stone has all been removed.
okay. So then what happens if, I don't know, someday in the future that starts to crumble away and causes hillside issues? Is that, what happens then? It's just up to the HOA to do whatever they need to do, is to work with the village to restore the hillside? Or can they say that the village has, done the wrong thing by saying they couldn't down there, or we're just telling them to leave it alone? That,
It would be up to the HOA because it would be that common property. They meet the requirements of our slope stability, which when working through now, we have no way of saying that it will or won't stand the test of time like any hillside, but we've put the measures in place and engineering reviews in place to best determine that at this time.
Tim, have you looked at that area and looked at that structure that's there?
Tim's yeah, Tim, have you looked at this wall thing that's down by the river where it had an old drive or access down by the river? They're not going to touch it.
Yes,
Patty,
at
I
some
think
point, there's
that might be
a
your
very
mic.
tall concrete wall as a base for the dam, basically. It's probably 10 or 15 feet tall. I'm not sure if it's the one highlighted there or the next level further north. But it is a concrete structure, basically the anchor point for the dam.
Is it like structurally important for the dam that's existing now? Even, I know it was lowered. Is it still part of the dam, like an anchor for what's there now?
I believe so. I mean, I think that was all part of maybe not the original structure, but was added at some point later. Is also an anchor point for the utilities that came across the dam.
So would the HOA be responsible for maintaining that or repairing it if it failed, or how does that all work with the dam tying into that?
That's a great question.
If there was some loss of stability on that slope, the HOA is obligated to repair it. We've put that into the declaration.
But what if that loss of stability is caused by this concrete thing breaking down, or
Doesn't matter.
doesn't matter?
Basically, the dam and that bank come together on the property line.
So what if, sorry, this is going off on all sorts of tangents, but we'll just, sorry, what if a flood, what if flooding significantly, affect the hillside? Is the HOA required to restore the hillside however the village wants them to, or they just have to do what their homeowners want to do to stabilize their houses? Like an act of nature.
The cause for this instability is not going to stop them from having the obligation. And any work that
Okay.
they're going to do within that protected common area, the village has to approve. That's in the CCRs also.
Okay. All right, well, sorry, a lot of tangents. I'd like to move forward with approving or with deciding whether or not to approve these modifications that are in the zoning letter. And then I think we need to have a number of things. We need to know whether they've received their variances from BZA. We need to get final development agreement to review We need to perhaps know what the Millers are going to do about the easement.
Rob, can you bring up your letter?
And we need to know specifically what points need to be modified for the roadway before we can do preliminary plat approval, in my opinion. So I'd like to go ahead and work on the modifications that we could go ahead and do, and then have, I'm not really ready to do a preliminary plat approval at this point, but.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I agree.
So, okay. Wendy, are you okay with that?
She's on mute, but I read lips and she said yes.
Okay. My only issue with that is, Dale, that previously we had talked about granting modifications with the condition that certain things like that, they're all the things that you had listed in the development agreement, that they have to be 5 feet back from the crest, that all the drainage has to not go down the face of the slope, stuff like that. So can we have these modifications granted contingent upon approval of the development agreement, or should we just
I would do
approve
it-
the?
No, you could do a condition upon approval of the development agreement and the declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions.
Okay.
If we end up having to approve or not approve the development agreement, then what's the point of having this contingent on that? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. And
Say that
we
again?
don't generally do contingent stuff on planning and zoning. You know, either we modify something or we don't modify it, and that's it. The number one, I thought we agreed that we don't have enough information to consider that.
Right.
So the rest of the things, we can look at modification or not, or just, vote on yay or nay on them.
Well, as a practical matter, they have to come back for final plat approval, and you're not going to grant that without the development agreement and the CCRs being approved. So if you don't want to include them, I don't have a problem with it. But I am saying that if you want to include them, I don't see why you couldn't.
I'd like to cover ourselves as much as possible and include the requirement for approval by Planning and Zoning Commission of the development agreement and the conditions, I say it again, Dale, the CCRs by
The declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions. It's actually a little bit longer than that, the way Jordan drafted it, but it's close enough.
Right. So I would make a motion to grant the modifications requested for 0 front yard setback as indicated in number 3 of the zoning letter dated August 12th, 2020. With the addition that it's not just for units 3, 4, 5, and 6, but for units 1 and 2 as well.
Second.
And that would be conditioned upon our approval of the development agreement and the DCCR.
Are we doing these individually?
I think so. I think that's what we
Yeah.
decided.
Then I second that.
I think I already seconded it. But it's okay.
Harry or Rob, are you guys?
I seconded.
Rob, you're on mute.
Baker,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
Feniger,
Aye.
Pelosi,
Aye.
Rogoff.
Aye.
So number 4 in the zoning letter, the side yards, which would be as shown on the plans. Oh, what's the date of these plans?
August 6th.
August 6th,
August 6th
yeah.
Plans showing 3-foot side yard between units 3, 4, and 5. A 3-foot side yard on the west side of unit 6. And it doesn't say it here, but we need to add that there's a 3-foot, 3-foot setback between building 2 and 3 on the, between buildings 2 and 3. Is that correct? Or a 3-foot side yard
There's,
for building?
yeah, there's a 3-foot side yard setback for unit 2. Or are you talking about building 2 or unit 2?
Unit 2.
Unit 2, there's 3 foot to the east for unit 2. And
Yes.
yeah,
And there's no side yard for unit 1.
correct. Or units, unit 6 does not, yes, no side yard at all for unit 1. That's the ASF, part of the ASF structure. And then there's no eastern side yard for unit 6.
Okay, so so that would be a modification to this 1130-06A1B. And it would have the same condition of being conditioned upon approval of the development agreement and the DCC.
I'll second.
Okay. Davis,
Aye.
Feniger,
Aye.
Pelosi,
Aye.
Rogoff,
Aye.
and Baker.
Aye. Should I keep going or does anybody else want to do this?
Keep going, Patty.
All right, number 5, looking at the rear yard setbacks. Again, we need, as stated in the letter here, it says for units 3, 4, 5, and 6, we need to add units 1 and 2 here, that they would also receive the modification of a 0 rear yard setback from the lot line. So I would move to approve that with the same, or grant that modification with the same condition. as
I
the others.
second.
Okay. Motion by Baker, second by, that was Davis?
Correct.
Okay. All right, Feniger,
Aye.
Pelosi,
Aye.
Rogoff,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
And the last one that's for us is the minimum lot depth, number 8 on the zoning review letter. Each lot has a different dimension here that does not fit the code. I move to accept or modify as needed to have lot sizes as shown in the zoning review letter and on the plans from August 6th, with the same condition of approval of the development agreement and DCCR.
Second.
Motion by Baker, second by Feniger. Pelosi,
Aye.
Rogoff,
Aye.
Baker,
Aye.
Davis,
Aye.
and Feniger.
Aye.
Okay.
So what's the path forward here, Dale and Rob?
Well, the next thing you should do is set a meeting so that we can go over some of these other issues that we talked about, the development agreement, the CCRs, the final plat. I
But
think
they
I'd like
can't
to,
go, Dale, we can't go over the final plat until BZA gives them the variance, unless they're gonna move the wall in the front yards of the houses.
well, the wall isn't in the final plat.
We just
But
had a
that-
whole,
No, that, it's in the improvement plans, but not in the final plat.
But where the where the road is in the plat. And
Right.
if they have to, how they do the road, because they can't do the retaining wall the way they're planning, then I
Well,
think we
there's-
need to know if the wall's
Yeah,
gonna
well-
be,
But that raises another issue, which is when they can start doing the site improvements. The reason for this meeting was we wanted to get your review on the modifications and the BZA's variances tomorrow night so that they could go ahead and do foundations and to do the site work. Other than they wouldn't get building permits. I would agree that this retaining wall issue creates a problem for doing the site work.
they don't need a building permit to dig foundations?
They need a permit, but not the building permit to put the sticks up. It's just a foundation, but Harry and Rob and I reviewed that last month, and we were prepared to let them start on the foundation work once the variances and modifications were granted.
Okay, I'm completely against that. I have a whole couple pages here of with their drawings here that are relevant to that. I thought they were going to indicate trees that will be removed and retained in the back, the limits of disturbance on the east end of the development. They said last time they were going to move those in, and they're in the same place. I'm confused about what's going on in the back of the buildings. There's a protected common area from the crest down, but we're saying the lot line is at the line of the foundation. So what's happening between the line of the foundation and the crest?
Well,
And don't they need the retaining wall to be able to start digging foundations?
It's
To
around
stabilize
the
the
same
hilltop.
time, but it's not totally required for
But
site
what about
work,
the
but it's along that same time.
Do we have the engineering information on the hillside and on the data for the road?
We have preliminary back on that. We're working
Yeah.
on finalizing that.
Yeah,
I have-
they can't go ahead on the foundations until the geotech is done and approved.
Right.
But
They
I would,
can't go foundations until we've granted preliminary plat approval. Right? I mean, how can you start digging foundations if we haven't given approval to the plat?
Right, correct.
So they can't do foundations.
Well, that was all in discussion if the preliminary plat was approved, but if that's not going to happen, then
Well, I
we have
mean-
to wait for that to occur.
Well, we
Okay.
could review the preliminary plat if you want to have a meeting, like, say, next Wednesday.
But there's no reason to do that unless BZA approves the
Right, they're
retaining
meeting,
wall tomorrow. Okay.
But they're gonna have to set another meeting to
For
do the
notice.
wall, because the Millers and others are gonna need to be given notice that the wall's being considered for a variance.
it can't be added to the agenda at the last minute.
Not
So there's
that.
no reason for us to meet next Wednesday, Dale.
Isn't BZA contingent on council, the potential of council asking to review something?
There's a 15-day window for their opportunity to appeal it.
No. I mean, I don't know that anybody would, but you don't know.
Right.
And I would also really want to have the geotech report and a resolution of the private drive. You know, what the specifications of that are.
Well, and it was already stated that for preliminary plat approval, you've requested to see the results of the BZA variances, the final development agreement, the Miller easement issue details, and then the roadway details. So
Right, which means that we can't have, I mean, that I don't see what we would have a meeting about next Wednesday then.
if we got
Well-
all that stuff.
Yeah, what we could do is, once we know we have all that stuff, send it off to you and try and set up a meeting, get a date.
That's fine. I don't think they should be allowed to do anything on this site until we've
Right.
given preliminary plat approval.
correct.
And you're making it sound like they can start digging foundations. the building, the stick building is of my concerns with this site, like the foundation work and digging out the site and grading and all of that is the part that's important. And we need the hillside review. We need, you know, a bunch of things as you've said.
Yeah, well, clearly, we were expecting there would have to be preliminary plat approval and the geotech approved before they could do the foundation. The only thing that's different is we didn't know that we needed to consider a variance for the retaining wall.
Is that something
mean-
that BZA would take up tomorrow night, or because it wasn't on the agenda, can they not do that?
It's
They have to
really,
give notice.
it's not, if it was something close to or part of what they were already granting variances on, they could have done it. But because this is totally a separate issue, different code provision, and the neighbors didn't get notice, they can't do it tomorrow night.
What
Right.
if the neighbors showed up?
Well, you'd have to have everybody who's entitled to get notice show up or
Okay.
waive notice. But if somebody wants to do that and get it done before tomorrow night, it'd be okay with me. But we still also, you know, it's not just the immediate neighbors. Anybody who wants to can come and oppose. So we have to have it on the website for 14 days, Rob?
15
And I
day
think we-
notice.
15 days. Okay.
I think important for that review by BZA, if I was on BZA reviewing whether or not to grant a variance for a wall, I'd want to have our engineer's input on whether he thinks the wall would be fine as shown on the plan, or if it should be set back the way the new code is saying it should be. You know, that's seems like an engineering sort of thing. So you would need engineer review of that, which probably can't happen before tomorrow night.
Correct.
Right.
You know, if the village engineer says, you know what, I think in this case, the 5-foot tall wall sloping down, the way it's going to be constructed is entirely sufficient for the type of hillside we've got here, then I'd be a lot more willing to grant a variance than if he said, I'm pretty concerned about this. So that's one reason I think it probably can't be heard tomorrow.
Yeah, and I don't think they would want, like you said, they wouldn't want to consider the retaining wall variance without having the geotech information resolved.
I would also like to review our minutes because I thought we had a conversation about protecting the area to the east where that hillside is of the unit 6. And I don't know where that language would be added or.
Well, it's supposed to be, my understanding is that it's a zero lot side yard setback there on the east end of
You know,
building unit 6. So that's common area. The issue is whether they designate it as protected common area. So that's one of my issues with the plat is that what's designated protected common area is the hillside of the river bank, which is what we asked for. But I think that hillside on the east end was also something that the Chagrin River Watershed Partners brought up as being a pretty sensitive area. And that's why we struggled to maintain that 35-foot
Right.
setback. Wendy, that I think that should be considered protected.
I agree.
Not,
Well, let me ask Mike that question now, because let's get that out of the way. Is there any reason, Mike, why you couldn't include that area east of the house in the protected common area?
I don't see, Alex, unless you have a problem with that, or Jordan, I guess confirm with them as well.
Can
No,
we
obvious-
pull up that?
Yeah, I just don't know what the condition of that area is. I'm not familiar
What-
enough with it.
Well, I've
Wooded
walked it.
Hills.
I think it's a fairly steep slope. It's not flat. I mean, that was why we had the setback there to be 35 feet.
Yeah.
Because there's a slope there.
It's-
I'm not seeing all the lines, but you see how they're fairly
Yeah,
close.
if you go up to existing conditions, Rob, I think it's
Yeah.
page 2. You'll be able to see the existing conditions on there. I really don't have a problem with it. But
Hold on.
in my opinion, it's not necessary, but I mean, we can, I think it's fine to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think we wouldn't want somebody deciding to dig that out and put a wall or something there.
Well, they wouldn't be able to do that anyway. So, you know,
Not-
according, you know, the decks and bylaws in your code, just in general, you wouldn't be able to just do that. So,
So
They have it protected and taken off the table for now.
can you show page 3, Rob?
Sure.
Page 3. So like, up at by the riverbank, these little, oops. So there's a designation for protected open space. But it doesn't include the East End.
No, that was not included in the East End. That was part of the, as shown here, part of the utility and maintenance easement, which is the area.
I don't understand why the East End has to be part of the easement.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, I'm with Wendy that I feel like that should be protected. And also there's a page that shows the limits of disturbance during construction. And that's along the crest line of the north side of the development, but it's far to the east of of unit 6. Last time they said it didn't need to be this wavy line. Last meeting, we were talking about it and they said, oh yeah, that doesn't need to be way out there. So,
yeah,
like,
we can tighten that up again. It's you know,
okay, it's just the whole point of having that 35-foot setback on that end was that the Millers were really concerned about that area. The Chagrin River Watershed Partners noted that area with the hillside and everything. So the point of having the building setback was to not disturb that area.
So a typical, if you do a residential lot, I know you guys typically don't see just a single lot come through for the most part. But within the setback, typically you can disturb, you just can't put your foundation within that setback. So you can still do grading within that setback. So when we received the setback, there was no note of not being able to disturb that area. We're willing to put something on there after we're done. There's no disruption of it or put that undisturbed area or however we have it labeled. We're willing to do that, but during construction we will have some to be able to grade this off, as you can see on this grading plan, that we will need some area there to do that.
So you're changing the grade?
Yes, I mean, if you build a house there. You're gonna have to change the grade to make it the water flow. So we will be changing the grade in some of that area.
And I don't think we anticipated that when we determined that we wanted a 35-foot setback there.
Right. I think I do recall that that was a concern of the watershed as well as the Millers in our idea. And part of the reason why we reduced the footprint, because he wanted more units originally, was so that we could protect that area along with the front, well, it's the rear, but along the riverbed. And we just don't want to destabilize that area.
And so the other condition of our approvals originally, I believe should still stand, would be that all water or drainage from the development none of it would be directed over the riverbank.
Right, that's correct. That's still in effect.
So don't these contours send the water down to the river? But my guess is happening, it's a hillside now. It's going down there now.
If it's already the topography of that area, and they're
But they're
restoring to
changing.
the original. I don't know.
Did this grade change get approved by ARB? Isn't that part of their?
It is, and I don't believe that they discussed it. I don't recall anyway that they discussed that grade change.
No, there was no discussion.
They had these drawings and reviewed them, whether there was discussion at the meeting or not. They did have these drawings and they reviewed them and approved them.
So you're not really, this change in grade kind of, it builds up the land closer to the building, is that right?
So, yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. So it's not like you're making the grade really different than it was. It's just you're extending the higher portion.
We're
over towards-
essentially just, getting it away from the house. It's, you don't want to grade right into a home. So it's essentially grading that away from the home.
And I believe that the engineer has to approve a grade change also.
Yes, and again, that's been submitted and we received comments back. That was not one of his comments. Yeah, we received that and then.
all the water from the roof and everything goes into downspouts into the
Correct.
sewer.
Correct. So all the water from the downspouts will go in, and same with the driveway.
Is there a possibility of adding like a foundation drain along the east side of this building that it would, because it seems like you're gonna have a lot of water coming down off the hill.
There will be a foundation drain in the, in the actual building. Yes.
And where does that drain to?
That'll drain. Yeah.
Drain into the sewer?
This storm, yes.
Storm sewers, yes.
Whatever. Okay. Yeah, that's just part of, I guess I thought that area was going to be basically undisturbed since it was a hillside and we had specified the setback to be away from there. That's the sort of thing, the plat approval that to look at. And then I guess while we're at it, if I could just ask also about the protected common area along the river. Can we go back to sheet 3, Rob?
Yes. And bye.
So like, I feel like it should all be protected.
Well, the only reason why you wouldn't want to do that is it's just maintenance for the homes. You know, and you know, we do have you know, footer tile, stormwater drain running down there to be able to
It's a whole,
be able to drain that out as you guys requested, to take it out to the storm. So as you know, it would be my suggestion not to, just for maintenance reasons. Otherwise, every time there's a clogged drain or something in the future, they're supposed to come see you to be able to, you know, go on that property to be able to do that.
What is this, the crest line?
Yes, that's the crest line.
It looks like the buildings are a lot farther from the crest in some cases than I thought they were, but maybe that's because the porches aren't shown here, the balconies aren't shown.
Well,
No.
the structures are all 5 feet. I mean, they
At
vary.
minimum.
Yeah, they vary in depth, but they're at least 5 feet at minimum.
Does anybody have anything about the plat that they want to bring up or discuss at this point? Or do you want to study it on your own and come together for a, for the next meeting? Where hopefully we'll have all the information.
So you know, there will be changes on the plat for dedication of easements to the village and for the language that says that if there's any disturbance of the private road, that the homeowners are going to have to fix it. And there's a few other notes that we gave to Jordan and Mike. They know what needs to be changed.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we need to just really just study this and the development agreement.
And when's the geotechnical study gonna get finally approved, or do we not have a date for that?
We're getting close on that. We're still in discussions. We have a meeting tomorrow to discuss that. So hopefully we'll be able to work those items out and
Can we ask you, Rob, that when you finish the meeting tomorrow, that we get notified as to the results of that meeting right away, rather than the minute before our meeting?
sure.
Thank you.
And does that analysis look at the east end here, hillside over here?
I will ensure that we do discuss that.
'Cause that's got to fall under hillside regulations, I would think, right? 1152.
More than likely, yes. Because of the grade change. Yeah, the whole site is being looked at with that in mind.
Okay.
I think Tim is still online. You can ask him directly.
Sorry, he's like, I have to scroll down to see Tim. Let's see, there he is. Yeah, did you look at that east end, Tim?
No, I did not. There's actually the fill section that you were referring to early. So any place that they're placing fill, we wanted to be covered under the geotechnical engineer's recommendations. So we'll just take a look at the total depth and make sure that's done per recommendations. And I mean, you mentioned also that that's a small area that actually drains to the riverbank, where, you know, about 90% of the site is collected and transmitted to the storm sewer.
Yeah, so we'll need your opinion on the grade changes there. And also limits of disturbance. We envision that staying untouched. No trees cut, no grade changes. So now we're aware that that's not the case, at least in terms of grade changes. So,
Probably gonna
And
have to
I-
cut trees to change the grade, right?
yes, to the extent of how much they have to go in there.
I thought that the architectural review had reports from the engineer on grade changes prior to reviewing. Is that incorrect?
Just what was shown on the drawings, Wendy.
Okay. But I thought we had requested that they look at that in the future. Adjacent properties, grades.
The ABR?
Yes.
Well, I think they looked at it, but it's ultimately it's under the engineer's review.
And don't, and did, oh, so they approve it based or prior to hearing from the engineer?
They look at the drawings. Remember, ABR is not engineers, so I think to rely
Right.
on village engineer.
So they don't see a review from the engineer prior to them
Not
reviewing
typically, no.
Yeah,
plans.
that's correct.
And did Tim see the watershed report? Sugar and
Yeah.
watershed? Okay.
All right.
So Rob, the next step is we'll hear from you what happens with the meeting tomorrow about
Yeah.
engineering.
Yeah.
And Dale will get the final development agreement and CCRs. And we'll see what BZA does tomorrow. And we'll hopefully hear if progress is made with the Millers.
There's no
And-
reason for us to have a special meeting until at least 15 days from tomorrow, right? Because BZA has to go through all that with the retaining wall, and there's no reason for us to do a preliminary plat approval until all of that is taken care of, right?
I would agree.
Okay.
And I don't know if they're gonna are they gonna drop another set of plans between now and then, or would we just make comments on this set of plans for plat approval?
Dale said there was going to be new plans after.
Well, it's just new wording on the dedications and stuff like that. There's not much change that's going to be made. There's more designations and the legends explaining stuff, but nothing substantive that you would be thinking about.
Dale and myself reviewed the preliminary plat the same way you are, and we made recommendations or requests for change for the final plat when that gets submitted. So we're in the same position where you're at now as far as reviewing and making comments.
Okay, so if anybody has comments on the plans, we should submit them to you, Rob.
Yes, that would be fine.
Like, I think it sounds like for a number of members of this commission, and the limits of disturbance there need to be tightened up, and I'd like to see the protected common area reflect a little bit more where we placed the limits of disturbance, which was like, I don't know why this wouldn't be protected. Like, I don't think you want somebody building a walkway to the river or a gazebo or
They wouldn't
whatever.
be able to.
Well, whatever.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna approve the plat, I'd like the plat to show what we're intending will happen in the future. It might be in the CRs, but you might as well designate it on the plat as well, since that was part of the approval.
Well, just to clarify, Patty, I think it will be in the final plat, but the preliminary plat, are you suggesting that we need it all in the preliminary plat too before the final? Or should we?
I don't, I'm just saying we're gonna be redrawing them anyways, but if they're not,
Oh, I thought they were gonna redraw them between preliminary and final.
That's
Well,
the
you could-
the normal process.
You
That's
could
not-
actually you could go right to a final.
If they were redrawn.
Right.
Okay.
Dale,
So
doesn't a
then it's
normal,
up to. it's
doesn't
up
a
to
normal
them.
final plat approval mean your improvements have to be installed?
No, or you've put bonds in place.
Bonded them?
Yeah.
To get final plat.
and the landscape
My,
plan,
well, my understanding here is that they're going to do the improvements first and then get final unconditional plat approval and record after the improvements are in. Mike, did I say that right?
Believe so. You said we're gonna do the improvements after preliminary plat and then record after the improvements are in the final plat.
Correct.
Correct.
Thanks.
and what about a landscaping plan?
We were told today that that is something that'll come some point in September. It's not
Okay.
ready yet.
Yeah, we're working on expediting that.
Good.
Can the plat show what areas would be subject to landscaping?
This
No.
plat's getting
That would
pretty
be-
crowded.
Yeah, that would be pretty unusual for a plat.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't care what type of grass it is or this or that. I'm just kind of wondering like the general idea. We can wait till September.
Yeah, and then maybe they'll have it in
Um,
hand by the time of your next meeting.
Yeah, hopefully that's the goal.
And then my last thing I have on this little list for now is there anything that will prevent these cantilevered balconies from becoming roofed structures or enclosed structures?
Well, if they were going to do that, they'd have to get approval from ARB. They'd have to amend the declaration, and they'd have to come back for another variance from the BZA.
Because then it'd be part of the main building that would be,
Well, they're adding
Right.
structure that's going to intrude into the setback.
except that it's hanging over it. It's not on the land, so.
Doesn't matter, it's still in the setback. That's why they need a
Where's-
variance for the balconies.
Right, but what I'm saying is if they get a variance for the balcony and it's allowed to stick out there, could they then build a pergola type structure over it or a roof or add screened-in walls or add glass walls? But
we actually-
where,
Yeah, we actually had that happen on Riverwalk. Wasn't it Riverwalk, Rob and Harry?
Yes.
We had-
So,
Yeah, they came in and trying to remember who reviewed that. But that was one where they were not, they were still within the setback,
yeah, they're in the setbacks and the height too. They didn't extend the height.
right? Yeah,
There was no setback extension. It was within the profile of the building, so it was a different scenario.
so what I'm saying is, should there be something in the HOA preventing that from happening in the future, like down the line, that 10 years from now, it's now a living room or a fully conditioned space or
Well, they couldn't do that, but they could put an awning or something over it.
No
the-
awning. Something in the-
Well, you know what I mean, a pergola, whatever. But
Yeah.
it can't become part of the unit. It's in the limited common area. So it can't be part of their own unit.
Don't they need a variance to build it anyway?
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Don't they need a variance for the,
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
cantilevered porches?
Right, so
Yeah.
if they're expanding the nonconformity or changing it, they have to get another variance from the BZA.
But they could get a variance for it.
Yes, they could.
Yeah.
But if they get the variance and they get ARB approval and HOA approves it, why would you prohibit it?
Well, because it goes against the intent of everything we've done with this development so far, which is
But
to
I think-
have set back a certain area and,
But it's
limit
not gonna
the,
get, it's not gonna get the variance and then the HOA approval and the,
how do you know that?
I don't know. All I know
I'm
is it's almost 9:30, Patty. Oh, it's after 9:30. That's all I know.
There's something for next time, but it's just something I thought of when we've been talking about enclosed and unenclosed porches and, that we've asked for these buildings to be set back a certain amount. And if you ended up making that more of a room with a roof and walls, then that defeats that purpose. So
Well,
something
when
to think about.
But
Wh-
Patty,
when the-
even if you put it in the HOA docs, the CCRs, they could still come to the village council and ask them to consent to modify it. So you're not gonna be able to totally stop that forever in the future. If they can get a variance and ARB approval and HOA approves it, and then council would approve it, they'd be able to do it anyhow.
Okay, just a question.
Yeah.
Okay,
no,
well, I guess we'll be adjourned unless anybody has anything else to add.
Nope.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. We appreciate your
you.
time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
But